And good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to learn about Cisco and Microsoft interoperability, the past, the present, and the future. Again, my name is Sean Wilson. I lead our client solutions team, which is made up of 4 different architectures, from data center to network to security to collaboration. And Tarek is going to participate throughout the event, can answer some questions if and when they come in, and we'll also take care of a couple of demonstrations a little later on. So from an agenda perspective, we're going to focus on why interoperability and why it's vital today. This has been something that's been going on for years, and we're going to take you through the history of Cisco and Microsoft being the 2 big players in the unified communications and collaboration space, in the journey that they've had as their platforms have changed, as clients have changed, as mobile device proliferation has come about, all the different things that have mandated interoperability between these platforms, and something just like what we're experiencing now with this pandemic, and to be able to remotely work using these technologies. So we'll focus on the why and why it's important and the challenges, with a focus on user experience. We're then going to go into the architectural considerations for interop. This ends up being a big piece. There's a lot to consider. And we'll talk about what can be engineered in the lab doesn't always work in production, as we all know. We'll focus on the user experience and the operations side of the house for interoperability when these 2 worlds are connected. Then we're going to go through the history, as I mentioned. So I'll take you through basically the last 12 years or so, when Cisco and Microsoft really had to start working closer together because of which piece of the pie they were both prominent in. And then we'll talk about today, and we'll also talk about some futures. It's really, really important to discuss the futures today, only because they're within a quarter from now, right? So within the next 3 months, with some things coming out in June, there's going to be more capabilities that we've all been searching for and have been talking about for the past 6 months, right? So we'll make sure that we touch on those as well. So why interoperability? First and foremost, that's what customers demand now. There's so many pieces that we need to consider for interoperability. It's not just voice and video and messaging. It's so many other things, like identity, calendaring integrations, not just for seeing folks' schedules to know when to schedule that next collaboration meeting, right, whether in person or virtual, right? There's calendar and integration components that are required for so many other things that we'll touch on. Meetings, of course, what we're doing here today. If Webex Meetings wasn't integrated with my Microsoft Office suite, I wouldn't have been able to join this meeting perhaps the way that I wanted to, or the way that a lot of users know how to join those meetings. Video interoperability is something that both Cisco and Microsoft have been working on for some time. We'll take you through some of the history there and why it's been so difficult, but where things are headed. Telephony, or voice proper, how do you bring these 2 worlds together? There's been a number of different ways to do that over the years, and we'll talk about what is out now and where things are headed with regards to direct routing. Devices. Device interoperability ends up being a big piece. Don't just think laptops and the software side of devices. Think video conference rooms. Cisco has the largest install base of video in the world. How can we ensure that you can join Microsoft Teams meetings and Microsoft Teams users can join the video side of the house on the Cisco devices? Messaging ends up being a big piece, and we're not just talking about email here. We're focused on instant messaging as well. Presence. Okay, so presence ends up being a really, really important piece, and something that users have really grown accustomed to having at their disposal. As new software applications come out, presence has evolved. It's changed. There's been so many different ways to look at presence, but it's really, really important that folks know that I'm sharing content right now, regardless of what device they're using. It's really, really important that they know if I'm in a call. It's important if they know that I'm out of the office. There's a lot of powerful things with presence, and disparate systems should be able to provide that data back and forth. File collaboration. File collaboration ends up being a really, really big piece. Okay, so whether you're using Microsoft Teams and want to integrate with different file repositories that are out there, or vice versa, if you're using something like Webex, Teams, or Slack, how can we ensure that those integrate with OneDrive or SharePoint? Mobility. Mobility is one of the main reasons why interoperability is mandated. Freedom of device choice, so many different things, moving in and out of your four walls. This is where when the two worlds are connected, infrastructure becomes complex and operational overhead, right, can be daunting. And we're going to talk about those challenges. Obviously, workflow and streamlining the workflow. Everybody wants to consolidate as much as they can into a singular pane of glass. So interoperability ends up being really, really important depending on what the tool you're using is. Security and compliance, obviously. All right, so security and compliance, arguably the most important thing up here, okay? And if the Microsoft world can talk TLS 1.3, the Cisco side should be able to support that and vice versa. That's just one of many things. There's a number of other things when it comes to messaging, right, where there needs to be security and compliance. If you've got two disparate systems hooked together and you're passing along credit card information, what's on the other side to ensure that that stuff's X'd out, right? So there's so many different things with regards to security and compliance. So at the end of the day, this is what customers demand, okay? And when it comes to the digital workspace, there's so many options out there. We're going to talk about the journey and the challenges with Cisco and Microsoft specifically today. So some architectural considerations. What do organizations need to consider to ensure that interoperability, for one, is something that they want to achieve because of the challenges that it's created and the historical challenges that it's created, but two, the things that they have to consider so that if it is something that they have to go out and do, because the organization is making that a reality, what do you need to consider? First, the technical options exist in each solution to achieve the interoperability. So what do I mean by that? If you're using Cisco Unified Communications Manager for voice and you're back on 10.5 and haven't upgraded and you want to integrate with Microsoft Teams via a Webex connector, you're going to be challenged there. So one of the biggest challenges with interoperability over time has been ensuring that versions of said applications stay in lockstep to ensure that the interoperability stays intact. This has been one of the biggest challenges. At times, different teams are managing these disparate systems, okay? So that creates another challenge in and of itself. So it needs to be one big cohesive team if you go down this path. And there's a number of different things that need to be considered. What is the user experience going to be? So there's solutions out there, and there's been solutions in the past that provide the outcome that you're looking for, but is the user experience what you truly want it to be? Is there an easier way of doing it? Is there a better way of doing it? Okay. So we're going to focus on the user experience. What are the operational aspects to achieve the desired outcome? The operational aspects end up being very, very important. Different skill sets, different talent. People come from different places. When you're looking at telephony, VoIP, strong network engineering background, but it's an application. It's truly an application on the network. It's a real-time application, very different than client server, very different than email, very different than messaging. It's a real-time application, which is why it's always been so tightly aligned to the network side of the house. But video, we've seen video and workplace transformation create a brand new team that sits in between all of this, right? Because Cisco, at the end of the day, their platform is a platform. They don't care if it's voice, video, messaging, or contact center, okay? Or the Webex cloud. It's one platform as far as they're concerned, and registration and intelligence for the devices that take advantage of the application all go to the same place. So very, very intermingled, right? Now to connect that with another platform that does similar things can create a number of different challenges. Not only that, the operational aspects of maintaining both are typically two different skill sets. So it's really, really important if you're going down this path that the teams are unified, right? And that the direction is top down on what the outcome needs to be. And what impact does your roadmap have on maintaining the desired interoperability and user experience? This is really a summary of everything that I just talked to. Depending on where you want to go, there's so many reasons why you may choose to go to the left. There's going to be a lot of reasons why you may choose to go to the right. What impact does the roadmap have on maintaining any interoperability that you've already established? And ultimately, maybe you've got yourself to a strong user experience at this point. There's certain things that you don't want to change to impact that. If they go to the right, what is the impact of that? all the things that you need to consider for Interop. From a user experience and operations perspective, I didn't say much about my background. I've been in telephony, unified communications, and collaboration, down to the video side of things, since early 2000s, right? And I've watched this specific journey, right? And I can tell you that in mid 2000s to 2010, these were very different players, Cisco and Microsoft. Cisco had the VoIP market, right? Obviously, they had that on lockdown. Microsoft had the productivity side of the house and the desktop side of the house. You could argue that it's still very, very similar, but we'll talk through that. But what I can tell you is the solutions that were brought to market in 2010, 2011, and 12, we'll talk about this history, were clunky, no matter how you looked at it. Not as seamless as they should have been. We want to make sure that the user experience is wonderful, all right? So how can I connect my Cisco UC infrastructure to my Microsoft environment in a way that I want to, okay? How can I provide a compelling user experience for focusing on the user? What options do I have to integrate rich collaboration capabilities into my Microsoft application suite? It's important for everybody to know that Microsoft exposes whatever APIs they need to from an Office perspective. Cisco's always taken incredible advantage of that, right? There really isn't any Office suite that Cisco hasn't integrated with natively. So when it comes to presence across Outlook, click to call, scheduling meetings on the fly based on Outlook, Webex meetings on the fly, being able to escalate a call, any meeting to a voice call or to a video call, right? It's all about open APIs at the end of the day. And when you looked at the old days of installing a, let's just call it an Office communicator, a Microsoft Link client, and then you went over the top of that with Cisco's Unified Personal Communicator client or Jabber, they updated the same registry keys. So any of the folks on the desktop side of the house know what I'm referring to here. The last application installed is what took over a lot of the primary registry keys. And that's how those two, they were challenged if they sat on the desktop together, but there were some products that were released, and we'll talk about them in a moment, which is really where we're back to today. All right, so things like cross-launching between applications, all right? But building rich collaboration capabilities into the Microsoft application suite is what this is all about to make a wonderful user experience. And if you go back to the Skype and Link days, right, they integrated with their apps well, but when you talked about voice and video and meetings, it wasn't as rich as it truly could have been. How can I communicate with my business partners who are using Microsoft from my Cisco collaboration solution and vice versa? So this is outside the organization. That's a completely different world. Establishing interoperability internal to your organization, you can do that. But how can you ensure that you remain, you can continue to connect with your clients and partners? That ends up being a really, really big piece. So that's a completely different leg that you have to pay attention to when it comes to interoperability. How much are we willing to invest in a comprehensive adoption services plan? So often overlooked, right? If you're going to change the user experience, implement new ways of doing things, ways that they need to connect and collaborate to get work done, it's very, very important that there's an adoption services plan wrapped around this. Anytime there's change to the user, whether that be on the desktop or mobile device or in a room, adoption services ends up being really, really important. And that's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing thing. From an operations perspective, this is nothing without the network. Nothing's changed there. This is as hybrid as it gets. Okay? Microsoft, Cisco, cloud presence are both imperative to connect these two worlds. Right? So it's nothing without the network. It's always been that way. To prioritize voice and video across the network, sure, with quality of service, but connecting these two worlds now, it's imperative to have a sound network and a sound edge. Okay, and we're going to talk about that. Hybrid cloud services makes it complex, but it's required. Operationally, you now have multiple unified communications platforms to manage, yet keep compatible, as I referred to just a few minutes ago. There's operational overhead there. Regardless of the licensing and subscription costs that may be required to bring these two worlds together so that you can get feature parity on both sides, there's operational overhead when it comes to the resources and the people that you need to care for the platforms. This is a huge one. I don't care who the software vendor is, but keeping your client operating system, images, applications governed, tested, and upgraded, all in lockstep as your platforms behind the scenes, the infrastructure and the apps change, is another challenge in and of itself. You could go all in with one vendor, and this can be a challenge. When you're working with two, you really have to pay close attention to this. Option services, it's an ongoing thing, vital piece of operations. And these are all the things that come along with that. So you need to have analytics and insight on how the technology and applications are being used. Right? From an operations perspective, if you're changing the user experience, you want to know how you're impacting them. Those analytics are vital. Ongoing organizational communications is a big piece of adoption services. Corporate communiques, little nuggets of information, video on demand. When you're onboarding new users into your environment, right, as they're joining your organization, there needs to be a plan established to not only educate them, but to keep them educated. This is an agile world. And while you have the ability to lock these down, and it's really, really important to keep the interop the way that you want it, and you open that up, changes come, having a test lab, right? A true lab where you can take these things through the motions that you need to so that you impact the production side of the house. These are all things that need to be considered. Training and communication plans for feature enhancements and deployments. And I already mentioned onboarding. Additionally, I mentioned this in the beginning. Let's not fool ourselves. We're all in IT, but not everything that can be engineered in a lab makes sense in production. This right here, in that rack, you can make a lot of things work. But the bigger picture is behind that. Well, that's a pretty legacy network infrastructure. All the things that you need to consider here, and I didn't even get to the internet yet. All right, so much thought has to go into this. Okay, so let's just take you through the history. I think this will be a nice foundation to let you know where they've come. Cisco UC app, so a little foundation here and let you know how tightly aligned the two organizations have been, aside from some proprietary stuff, which we'll talk about. Cisco UC applications were originally built on Microsoft Server OS. It's really important for folks who don't know that, right? Cisco started to make a shift in around 2007, 2006 to start embracing Red Hat and put more and more stuff on Linux-based appliances. But the original applications were originally built on Microsoft. So the expertise from an Active Directory and SQL and Exchange perspective was always inherent, right, in the solution. You needed to know these technologies or you couldn't run a strong VoIP environment. Right? It was required for unified messaging, which we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, all three of those were originally built on Microsoft Server OS, and two platforms or applications today still run on Microsoft. One being Unified Contact Center Enterprise, right? The reason why they've never shifted off of that is if you could think of the tens of thousands of agent contact centers that are out there, revenue generating machines, it's been really, really hard to shift. Now the cloud journey, there's a plan there for them. But TMS, which is a platform that does the calendaring integration for Cisco's telepresence world with Microsoft Exchange, also continues to run on Microsoft for a good reason there. TMS is ultimately going to be going away and being replaced by the calendar connector, which is native in the Webex cloud. Originally, Cisco voice signaling protocols were proprietary. Right? So Cisco acquired Celsius in the late 90s. Right? They were using a protocol called SKYPE, SCCP. Right? And it wasn't until about 2006 that they embraced SIP. There were so many reasons why they had to embrace SIP. One of the main reasons why they started to embrace SIP was not only because of the additional features that came along with it, but also carriers. If you think of where Cisco played from a service provider perspective, they needed to ensure that everything that they were doing on the transport side could support SIP. So they saw where the world was going here, and the IETF, IEEE, these guys all built these standards, right? And they started to make the move in 2006. Directory and messaging services integration started in early 2000s. So let's not just think about AD. Cisco Unified Communications Manager and their apps themselves can integrate with multiple directory sources. Obviously, AD is the most common, right? But they had to spend a lot of time working with Microsoft from an AD and an Exchange perspective in the early 2000s so they could put out technology like unified messaging. Unified messaging, for those who don't know, it's not just getting a voicemail and forwarding it to email. The repository at the end of the day that the two platforms pointed at were the same. So when unified messaging first came out, Exchange was the voicemail platform. Unity sat on top of Exchange. A lot of people don't know that, but Cisco had great expertise in that, and that is what their voicemail system was all about. So that gave you the wonderful unified messaging experience where if I marked a message as read in Outlook, it turned my message waiting indicator light off on my phone. If I went back in on my phone and marked that message as unread, the message in Outlook would become show as unread again. Same thing that if you delete it, the message store would signal that it was deleted in Exchange, please wipe it out on the voicemail side and vice versa. That integration works a little bit differently now because they're not using Exchange, right? So that unified messaging single inbox and Unity connection, that's a Linux-based appliance. Same exact experience, but Exchange is no longer there. Cisco Unified Personal Communicator. I'm sure there's some folks on today who know what this is, especially if they've had Cisco collaboration technology for years to come. CUPC, the acronym, was a full-blown instant messaging platform, but it had rich media capabilities. So think back in the Microsoft Office Communicator days. Problem with Microsoft Office Communicator, right? Very, very hard to get dial tone on it. It was very hard to get dial tone all the way up through Skype, right? Dial tone that people really wanted, but all the rich features that you wanted. CUPC was a messaging client that worked with Cisco's product, supported SIP, visual voicemail, place phone calls, receive phone calls from the outside world, and do video. Right? CUPC depended on Microsoft in every way when it came to calendaring, when it came to presence, right? When it came to directory sync. Right? Not just directory lookup, but sync. User attributes came over to CUPC. Right? So there was a file that looked at AD and pulled over whatever is necessary. Okay, so CUPC was one of the early collaboration clients on the desktop that had all the next gen features that you see a lot today. Right? More in the Link, Skype, Jabber kind of mind. But then there was CookieMock. This stands for Cisco Unified Communications Integration, or Microsoft Office Communicator, or Link. CookieMock was a completely different take. All right, CUPC, well, it got some traction in some large accounts because of its unification with their voice system and their contact center platform and the likes, and having a soft phone. CookieMock was a different take. Right, so Microsoft Office Communicator in OCS, right, post LCS, OCS came out, and then Link. This was all about putting a form at the bottom of the Office Communicator Link client that was connected to Cisco Call Control. Pretty straightforward, right? So you've got Link to do all of your messaging, all your collaboration, your desktop share. There was presence there. You could schedule meetings. You could do all those things, but you couldn't use it to make phone calls, right? Or maybe you could do computer-to-computer calls, but as soon as you wanted to call the outside world or receive an inbound call or put a DID on it or connect with another PBX, whatever it may be, you were challenged there. CookieMock was an application that Cisco developed in lockstep with Microsoft to put a form at the bottom so that Cisco maintained the voice. So you kept your voice and video separate, and you leveraged Link and and Office Communicator for all the productivity stuff. And so I would tell you, a clunky user experience at the end of the day. And the reason why, while it worked well, it functioned, the training was necessary because you had to gray out things in the Office Communicator and Link client for call control. Because Microsoft was just going down that path, just starting to get into telephony. So a user could be going through the file menu and see a call, but it was grayed out because you had to use CookieMock. So the user experience just wasn't there, okay? Presence and SIP interop, we already talked about this. Challenged. So Microsoft in the beginning used a very proprietary version of SIP. But they also used a proprietary version of RTP. This is what made it difficult to interoperate with them. So Cisco embraced open standards and all of the open SIP that was out there to be able to talk to Polycom or be able to connect to a Mitel system or whatever they would need to do. But they always had to build an appliance or some sort of transcoding box to do that interoperability, right? And they would have to do that on the fly. Now, Microsoft started to change about 3 years ago where they started to embrace more open-based platform. Remote call control to Microsoft ended up being very, very popular. So in Cisco Unified Presence Server, or I'm in Presence Server now, you could actually configure remote call control to Microsoft, right? So you could actually place a call into the Office Communicator Link side with your IP phone or a Cisco soft phone and vice versa, right? So you could connect the two worlds. And then this ends up being a big piece of interop history because it's how we really are where we're at today. It's probably almost everybody on this call, if they have a Cisco premise-based call control platform, has implemented Expressway. They didn't implement it necessarily to integrate with Microsoft. They implemented it to connect securely to the outside world for mobile workers, all right, or business-to-business video, or Webex integration. However, the Expressway appliances are also what run the cloud connectors to Microsoft. And this is evolving, and we're going to talk about that. Those cloud connectors for directory and calendaring could run on Expressway Core, okay, and connect all of your Cisco infrastructure to those two systems or those two services, which are vital. So here's a long history of interoperability effort. Significant change, right, going back to 2003. And I was fortunate enough to work on this for a long time. I came from Global Crossing, right? And Global Crossing was one of the earliest adopters of Cisco Voice. 2001, I had a Cisco IP phone on my desk, okay? 2003, we went down the LCS path. Not only did we go down it from a productivity perspective, we also looked at it from a voice perspective. We looked at it very, very closely, all the way through OCS. And I left Global Crossing to go to Data in 2008, and we had some great integrations established, right? Microsoft kept changing their platform for good reason, right? They had to. They were evolving. They were learning more, right? But if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, now 8 different platforms over 14 years, other vendors have to stay along with that, right? So the long history of interoperability effort here. You need to know, and one of the things that the Cisco folks say is they depend on Microsoft for everything, right? They're an M365 shop just like everybody else is, but they still use their tools, okay? So the expertise in-house on both sides to get these tools to collaborate is big. The other nugget of information that I'll leave you with is the individual leading the Cisco collaboration technology group now came from Microsoft, all right? And the biggest push that he's had is what we're going to talk about with what's possible today and in the futures in connecting these two worlds and making it the way that it always should have been. So from 2006 to 2013, Cisco owned the voice video contact center in the majority of the meetings market. Okay? From a market share perspective, this is still pretty close to accurate. But Microsoft owned productivity IM in the desktop in this era, right? And it was during this time frame when Cisco went after the real-time collaboration initiatives on the desktop and the mobile device. Right? They acquired Webex in 2007, for those who don't know. A few years later, acquired Tamberg. All right, but softphone ended up becoming so vital that most folks had a rich collaboration client on their desktop already for voice and video. Okay? So they started to collide. Interoperability desires were at an all-time high in 2011. I know this very, very well prior to coming over to SMP in 2012, based on what we were trying to do with an international enterprise. Right? Massive 40,000 phone deployment, big contact centers, big Cisco video deployment, Microsoft on the desktop. How can we make it all work together? And many, many folks were in that same spot, right? And that's where all those other technologies that I talked about were really, really being built and tested and validated. We need to talk. And what I mean by this is, yes, we need the two platforms to talk. In 2011, this is when it really became important. But the organizations needed to talk as well. Because as I mentioned, from a leadership perspective, these were not the same teams. They were very, very different teams. It was very, very complex and hard. That's the easiest way to put it. From 2013 to 2018, globalization and mobility drove the requirement for virtual real-time collaboration to an all-time high. And now look at what we just went through. So we don't even need to spend time on that, but it just digital transformation for organizations in the last 3 months is exponential. Wireless became pervasive. If you think about it, 2013, right? Wireless was really just becoming pervasive. Video was becoming pervasive at that time. It became easy. It worked. Networks were better, right? Focus on best in breed products for a long duration of time without switching, right? Made it so video collaboration became very, very positive with a great end user experience. And now, if you go back to 2015-16, workstream messaging applications took the industry by storm. You had Slack, then you had Spark, or Project Square, now known as Webex Teams. Then you have Microsoft Teams, all right? There's a few others. Google's coming out with one now, but these workstream messaging applications, vital for productivity. It's It's where all of our work lives, right? For those who have embraced it and institutionalized it, it's where all of our work lives, right? The more workflows and the more things that you can connect to that application, the better we all feel we're going to be. Right? So if we want to stay in a singular pane of glass, how can we ensure that I don't only have file collaboration and messaging, right? I also have voice and video. Right? So continued, minimal interoperability was established. It truly was, because it was complex. Right? So the last 7 years till recently, this has been very, very hard. Operational overhead, as I talked about in the beginning. True engineering specialists, very focused, specialized skill sets required to do this. Microsoft did not embrace standards-based protocols, right? They didn't. It took them a while to get there. They tried. They tried with Link and Skype. I don't know many people on Link and Skype phone systems, right? And after they put the Skype PBX in the cloud out there, that was also not a good experience for them. And you can see they've since changed, pivoted, because they had to. It didn't work well. And the meetings experience wasn't strong when it was cloud delivered either. Okay, so they knew that they had to change. And they knew that if people just wanted to meet, let's open things up. And they've gotten so good at this now. And you look at the people they've acquired from an open standards perspective. But now that they are, so many other things are possible. Okay, and they had their partners, they had their vendors that they worked with, right? Where people would have to build appliances that would do the inner working on the fly, as I alluded to, like Cisco did with Econo when they acquired Econo so they could connect to Microsoft, right? And that's why I have a Skype address in my Webex invite, because Cisco has bridging infrastructure in there that does the inner working on the fly. It truly was a clunky UX. If you got it working, it was a clunky user experience, right? Well, nobody wants that because you end up creating silos. Folks may embrace it, and if they don't adopt it, you know, they just choose not to use it, and it ends up being a failure at the end of the day. VDI has introduced a tremendous amount of obstacles for real-time media, plain and simple. Again, it doesn't matter who the vendor is, right? And anytime a new product is developed, guess what? They need to be thinking about that in the very, very beginning, okay? The Webex VDI offload solution is now very, very strong. We're testing that with clients right now. It's a newer version of that. They continue to change the way that they do it. And I tell you what, the digital workspace in VDI, it's finally really going to take off here because of COVID. I mean, certain organizations mastered it, leverage it, right? We use it at SMP, right? A lot of organizations didn't embrace it over time. COVID, secure access to a digital workspace and ensuring regardless of what four walls they're sitting in, having the same experience and keeping it secure is vital now. And at the end of the day, so many failed expectations and promises, right? I did the same thing, right? Everybody looks at both sides, look at where they're going. You can see the stuff in labs, they demo it at conferences, you can stand the stuff up yourself, but at the end of the day, it just got so hard that they just didn't deliver, okay? So, what did it look like for folks who had Cisco Voice, Video, Webex, and Skype? I'm not going to spend much time on this slide, but there's a lot of Microsoft services on this slide too. You've got Active Directory, you got Exchange, maybe your DNS and DHCP is delivered via Microsoft. But to connect to the Skype cloud, it required a lot of infrastructure. The decent thing here is a lot of this infrastructure is in place anyway. If you're a Cisco UC shop, right? Especially if you had video. The expressway piece is what ends up being something that's required here. But over the last 5 years, it's arguably been the most popular application in their suite because they needed it to connect to the edge and connect to other businesses. What isn't integrated in this slide is dial tone. Dial tone in this picture here is Cisco Unified Border Elements connected to the PSTN. All right, well, calls coming inbound to maybe a Cisco IP phone or a soft phone. How do I get that dial tone over to Skype? That's where those remote call control, CUPC type applications were being considered, okay? And then connecting the two worlds via video was far simpler than putting dial tone there, all right? And simultaneously ringing a Cisco phone and a Microsoft client. The only difference with this slide here is that the Skype infrastructure is on-premise. So now let's talk about what's possible today. We had a session, I think in the end of February, when the roadmap was really finalized and painted on both sides for these two. And I mean it when I said it was circa 2010. Just like it, and obviously it's no longer desired, it's a must. Right? Microsoft is winning the desktop battle, okay? But they got a long way to go in the voice meetings world, okay? So what can we do to make them work together? For those who don't know, they have come together. As I mentioned, Shri, who came over from Microsoft, had a big emphasis on this and bringing these two worlds together just to ensure that the two worlds can connect and that the user experience is wonderful. Right? So some of the things that I'm going to take you through today, right? We're at 11:08, okay. Webex meetings, Microsoft Teams meetings coming together. Webex devices joining Microsoft Teams meetings. Microsoft Teams users or software clients joining Webex meetings. Cross-launch from Microsoft Teams to a Cisco softphone client. File collaboration. And then inserting the Webex meetings bot and or module, if you will, into the Microsoft Teams client if you're a big Webex house. And I'm sure a lot of questions will be flying in as we go through these next few slides, but this is something that we're going to be talking about daily going forward. So client versus workload choice. All right, so if you take a look at this, I know that the two big gorillas in the room are Microsoft and Cisco, with Cisco having an emphasis on the calling and the video side. Obviously a massive Webex install base. I've been following these stats from COVID across Zoom, Microsoft, and Cisco, and while Microsoft Teams erupted, thousands of percent from a user's perspective, and they did 4 billion video minutes in April. Webex did 24 billion, right? Just to give everybody an idea of market share still. And a lot of that is because it's just been so embedded into enterprises for so long, all right? So the folks want to pull away from a Webex meetings subscription if they're a calling customer and they need enterprise voice grade features. Maybe not. There's some better together pricing modules that come into play there if the two are hooked into the same subscription. And then for those who have large installed bases of Cisco video, well, obviously, naturally, those are going to work better with Webex today, right? And if your Webex meetings, right, is still there, the video devices can connect through Webex to Microsoft. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about, okay? Email, Office productivity, file storage, and Team Collab. Team Collab being Microsoft Teams in this case. Yes. So how can we make all these work together? If a customer is using Microsoft 365, right, they can still integrate with Webex meetings, Webex Teams, right? Say you acquire somebody who's using Webex Teams and you wanted to bring those two worlds together. Webex calling or on-premise calling. And then Webex Rooms, which also means on-premise rooms. For those who don't know, that is the brand, right? So Cisco's rebranded everything Webex. Whether it's premise or cloud, they still refer to it as Webex. Microsoft Teams messaging only, right? And productivity, you still use meetings, calling, and rooms. Microsoft Teams messaging and meetings, you can still use calling and rooms, all right? So this is something that we're talking to all of our clients about right now. Folks who have Cisco voice and video and Microsoft Teams on the desktop. There's going to be better integration, right? And I'm happy to say that in June, and Tarek and I talked about this morning, that both Cisco Unified Border Element Integration for direct routing from Microsoft Teams Voice, along with the Cloud Video Interop, should be generally available. I'm always going to say should, but that's what we're hearing, and that's the update that we have. This Cloud Video Interop is something that Cisco has been working on with Microsoft directly, right? And once I show you the picture, it'll all make a lot of sense because it sits in the Azure cloud. And having that Cloud Video Interop allows you to ramp the traffic or connect the Microsoft Teams world right in Azure data centers through directly to the Cisco cloud, the Cisco private data centers where the Webex infrastructure resides, okay? We're developing guest join B2B capabilities from web-enabled devices. So we'll talk a little bit about WebRTC and how natively Microsoft Teams users will be able to leverage Cisco telepresence endpoints, all right, without the Cloud Video Interop module, okay? And then Cisco Webex Meetings for Microsoft Teams app is available today and has been for a long time. So for those who are not using the Microsoft Teams Webex integration, we'll take you through a few examples of what that looks like. So the cloud video interop or integration from Microsoft Teams. The experience that you're used to is, I think, is what's most important here. All right, so for folks who have been using Cisco Video or Webex for a long time and they don't want to impact the end user experience, the CVI play in the Azure Data Center is the way to go. Okay, this is the same way that Microsoft's other partners are integrating with them, the same exact way. So the Polys of the world, all right, they would be doing the same thing. Okay, Poly would have any one of the bridging stuff in Azure's data centers, and that's how Microsoft is certifying these partners. But the in-meeting layout controls, right, all the things you're used to with equal, overlay, prominent, active speaker, all that stuff exists with the CVI. All right, content share when initiated. And we'll talk about why that's important, because with WebRTC, you don't get that. Content share from a Cisco device via cable or wireless. Again, folks with large Cisco video deployments, be able to share content directly into a Microsoft Teams. Right? You get your full roster list. You get everything that you expect that you would traditionally get via Webex. All right? And then additional device-specific features, such as speaker tracking. So all the stuff that's native to the endpoint. Right? None of that goes away. So what might it look like to join a Microsoft Teams meeting from a Cisco telepresence endpoint that's CVI enabled? You would walk into the room, just like you always have, and your green join button would be there. All right, so the one button to push experience is still here, all right, with the CVI in place. Layout examples ends up being really, really important because WebRTC is not this way. Shows you why the CVI ends up being really, really important. Active speaker on one screen, multiple participants on another. When you share content, video goes to the one that you prefer. Okay, and that, as you can see with the one on the right, and then the most recent active speakers are below the active speaker, which is the same experience that most of you are already used to. Single screen flexible layouts. So the gateway will provide different layouts to Cisco video devices, while Microsoft Teams users will see their respective layouts. This is where things end up being really, really nice. Okay, so folks using Microsoft Teams on the other end have the experience that they're used to. Cisco Rooms, the experience that you're always used to. Okay, so connecting the two worlds with the CVI brings that to bear. This is the same thing Cisco did with Econo and SKYPE. All right, so Cisco acquired Econo, right, integrated into their solution so you could connect securely Cisco to Microsoft. The reason why that was so hard is, again, they weren't using standard-based protocols, so Econo developed an application to do all that interworking. This is standards-based, okay, as is WebRTC. So what might this look like? This is actually a pretty simplistic diagram, but it does a really, really good job of visually depicting how these two worlds come together. All right, so the Cisco Video Interop Gateway sits in the Azure Data Center. All right, as you can see off over here, where it says Connector and Graph and Communication Services SDK. And this is where they take advantage of the Microsoft APIs. And it's maintained by Cisco. Cisco's bought Azure presence, built their CVI. It's the same thing that the Blue Jeans of the worlds would do. All right. You got your customer's tenant, and then you got these two little laptops connected up here in any existing video meeting. And those 3 slot panels right there would be, okay, there's 3 Cisco video endpoints or 2 Webex users in a Cisco video endpoint in the meeting, right? And this is what the experience would look like on their side. And then the visual depiction on the left is, that looks like an MX300 sitting on premise, connected to the same meeting via one button to push. All right, so truly bringing the two worlds together, just as if you were using a Webex desktop client. Okay, that is the purpose of the CVI. This is going to be the most popular deployment model for sure. Different visual depiction here. It's interesting to show how one button to push works, but I talked about the calendaring service, right? And how important it is that that be integrated. Well, that's native Webex to Microsoft now, right? So you just have a calendar connector that sits between O365 and the Webex cloud, and that's what pushes down all the calendar and information to the telepresence endpoints. And no different than it works today, if you're cloud for both of them. So from a signaling path perspective, all right, if we were to build this out, what does it do to the network? Cisco signaling, beautiful, right? It's really no different than if you were to go to the Webex cloud, right? Once it hits the Webex cloud, it goes across the direct connect right into the CVI in the Azure Data Center and over to Microsoft. right? The Microsoft signaling stays local, right, to Azure, right? So exactly what we will want to see. Interworking to H323, so folks who haven't completely converted to SIP, can be provided via an expressway. Most folks have expressway in their environment. So if H323 interworking is required, that's still possible as well. It could be some folks who have some legacy Polycom infrastructure, but a big Cisco install base where they're still talking H323, that's going to be okay just between those two worlds, okay? From a media perspective, right, so the RTP streams themselves, very similar to the signaling piece, right? So all of the Microsoft media stays local to the Azure data centers and then down to your endpoints based on where you are, right? So if you're at home, home hanging off the internet, right into you. If you're VPN'd in, you'd hairpin that, okay? Unless things like ICE are implemented, right? That's not the Cisco ICE. And then you have, I think what's really, really important to call out here specifically is that you can have up to 2 video streams per endpoint. So that's really, really nice. That's the traditional experience that folks are used to. Okay, and then when you share content, it would drop down to 1. So now let's just take you through the WebRTC example. So again, that was the Cisco video integration in the Azure data center. Okay, in the event that you have premise-based Cisco endpoints and they're not cloud registered, that's okay. All right, there is an edge appliance that'll bring those worlds together. So from a WebRTC perspective, this is a really, really basic connection, okay, without all of the bells and whistles that you're used to in the Cisco Webex meeting and Cisco telepresence endpoints. It's taking advantage of WebRTC, okay? And in this example, what they're visually depicting is, let's just say you're on, this is zooming in on a Cisco video endpoint, for example. The active speaker will be prominent, and then the other folks will turn into avatars down in the bottom right-hand corner, okay? So this is just an active call with Microsoft Teams on the WebRTC side. From a Teams client perspective, if you look off to the right here, it's going to look a lot like what you would expect. And I think Microsoft's just going to 9 participants. From a video perspective on the same screen, I know they were 4. Right here, they're depicting the 4, but the experience on the video endpoint side ends up being what's impacted here, right? So active speaker prominent, right? And then other users as avatars in the bottom right. Still a wonderful experience. This does not require the CVI. Second here. There we go. So what's the endpoint experience look like when they share content? So when using WebRTC, when they share content, the active speaker goes away. Not ideal, but focus on the content. Somebody sharing content, that's what we want to be looking at. But that is one of the limitations of leveraging the WebRTC. And then other participants, they stay down there as avatars in the right-hand corner. We'll see where this goes. We'll see if they can take this to the next level over time. I'm just happy to see that the Microsoft Teams web app is using WebRTC. Right, so everybody embracing WebRTC is going to be better for everybody, right? Because then you can just click to join from browsers, regardless of the platform that they're using. From a architecture perspective, all right, you've got your Microsoft Teams endpoints off to the right, your Cisco video endpoints in the center here, connected to the calendar service for one button to push, all right? The Microsoft Teams Cloud sitting in between. So the Cisco endpoints, again, joining via WebRTC, do not need to go through the Webex cloud or the CVI, all right? This will be one of those experiences. It'll be really, really interesting to see how it plays out, right? This is not yet available, to be announced in June, okay? The CVI, I can already tell, is just going to be richer, direct connect, probably I'm sure it's going to be a much better experience, let alone from the user experience that you're already used to. So Microsoft Signaling and Media, I just took you through this. Webex Cloud is there. There's no CVI, right? Depending on where your endpoints are registered, if they're premise-based, you go right out to your tenant, right, and connect there, okay? Does not traverse through the expressway. Just going right over the top across the internet, okay? So that's it with regards to video endpoints connecting to Microsoft Teams connecting to the Webex side of the house, all right, and bringing the Cisco video infrastructure into the meetings, regardless of what meetings platform that you're using. And I want to go back to one point on that. Very, very focused on ourselves, obviously. Internal collaboration is important. What we need to keep in mind is, what are other people doing? Okay? We have to always consider that, right? Because other people aren't going to be doing exactly what you're doing. Right? So as you build this architecture, you need to ensure that if you're used to connecting to somebody, or there's a certain business unit or several business units used to working the same way, you need to take that into consideration. Okay. Quickly, the WebEx meetings for Microsoft Teams piece. So for those who have already invested in Microsoft Teams, have it rolled out and are using it day in and day out, but you're a WebEx shop for meetings because you need the scale, all right? Or you do have a large installed base of Cisco video and voice that you connect to the WebEx cloud, there's a way to continue leveraging WebEx, right? If you just want to use Microsoft Teams for collaboration, productivity, messaging, teamwork, etc., you want to use WebEx meetings behind the scenes, number of different ways to do that. And this has been supported for a long time now. You can send a message in a channel to share your personal meeting room, schedule personal meeting room, right? Your WebEx personal meeting room, start or join meetings from Microsoft Teams, view upcoming list of your meetings, see the progress of those meetings, if they're active, how long the meeting's been started, who's in there, all right, from a roster perspective, view your meeting recordings, get all the notifications that you would expect, okay? Rich integration to WebEx, okay? So let's take you through just a little bit of that. So it's pretty straightforward to add a WebEx bot to a Teams channel. So for those who are using Microsoft Teams, you can put a bot in there with any channel. And then with the bot in there, there's a number of different commands, right, as with any bot. So interaction that you can have with the bot, but also very, very easy just to drop your personal meeting room into a channel if you want to meet with people, all right? In this instance, you can see that the channel is the UX review channel, right? With the WebEx bot added, very, very easily, can you just put your personal meeting room in there and click to join, all right? So great experience, and that's the earliest integration that existed, okay, between Microsoft and Cisco. It's gotten much better. You can add WebEx tab to Microsoft Teams, just like you would add any application, okay? So to go about doing that, you would add a tab at the top of any channel. You would select the Cisco WebEx Meetings tab, all right, and that would drop that in. As I mentioned, you can, if you want to drop them, once it's dropped into any channel tab, very, very easy to start or join a meeting for set channel, all right? You can join your personal meeting room from there. You can view your calendar from there, or you can schedule a meeting from that channel. And you can not only join by pressing the green button, but you can enter the meeting or room ID as well. Cisco WebEx Meetings chat messaging extension ends up being a big piece. You're consolidated into Microsoft Teams and you're in a WebEx meeting, right? You're hosting a WebEx meeting and there's chat happening in the WebEx, right? Because so many folks are used to using, just like the question and answer session in this event center meeting here, you can bring that chat extension into Microsoft Teams as well. As I mentioned, a number of different notifications that you would expect if you were using the WebEx desktop app or WebEx Teams. Whether your meeting's getting ready to start, whether it's ended, who attended, playing back your recordings, etc. And then your personal tab, all right? So actually having your own WebEx personal tab. This is very, very much like the WebEx desktop app. And so you could go to your personal tab, right? Schedule meetings from here, look at the meetings that you have scheduled, and actually see meetings that are in progress, okay? Invite attendees that are not part of the channel, right? If it's added to a channel, so that ends up being a big piece as well. It's great to hit start or join meeting and have only the folks in that channel, but if you want to invite somebody outside of the channel, you can do that. Then, as I mentioned, if you actually want to see how long the meeting's been going on and the participants and roster, you can do that through Microsoft Teams. All right, so really, really rich integrations, right, to the meeting side of the house. Now, again, just to take you through that one more time, think about the leveraging WebEx meetings, Microsoft Teams on the desktop, but having a Cisco video infrastructure, right? Still scheduling WebEx meetings like you always have from Outlook if you choose to. Microsoft Teams already picking that up, you staying in the same pane of glass as you always would to join the meetings, all right, with your Microsoft Teams experience and having the Webex video endpoints come in the way that they always have. Okay? So what about voice? All right, this ends up being a big question mark here. And Tarek actually has some demos ready to actually show you where we are today with this. All right, and there's a couple of different voice integrations. There's the ability to leverage a Cisco soft phone and cross-launch it from Microsoft Teams. So for folks who have large or just Cisco installed base and Unified Communications Manager on-prem today or WebEx calling, all right, and they're using a Cisco soft phone, how nice to be able to launch a call or pull your soft phone up in front of you or via directory, start a call leveraging the Cisco soft phone from Microsoft Teams. So we're actually going to show you that today. This is what it looks like. So this would be comparable to the cookie mock application that I talked about years ago, where Cisco embedded a form on the Office Communicator link client to where you could actually place calls from there. That's actually where I know it will go. Right now it's cross-launching an application, and Tarek will show you this. Please ignore the subject to change and coming soon piece. That's dated. This is actually out today, and we're going to show you that. But yeah, being able to cross-launch any soft phone from Microsoft Teams is a step in the right direction. Because call control is a different animal, right? And Microsoft Teams is not an enterprise voice grade system. It's not there yet. There's no call recording, queuing, right? A lot of direct routing options now, and the approach is solid to where you can bring your own PSTN, right? And they're making headway there. But when it comes to rich enterprise voice features and call coverage scenarios and all those things, Cisco's still obviously the market leader in that space. So it works with UC Manager and WebEx calling, as I mentioned, along with soft phone and desk phone control support. Right? So the desk phone control support, a lot of folks are used to that experience. For heavy soft phone utilized folks who want to control their hard phone sitting on their desk, like I do, especially when I'm in my office. If I'm out in a cafe or I'm at my home, I use a soft phone only. But here I have a really, really nice phone. And if I want to control that endpoint just by typing someone's name in a soft client and taking the speakerphone off hook, that's a great feature, right? Because it's a purpose-built speakerphone with better audio quality. So you have the ability to do that as well, because at the end of the day, you're just cross-launching the soft phone client that controls the desk phone already. So some projected user experiences. Some of this is out. Some of this is forthcoming, all right? The Cisco call button added to the Microsoft Teams palette. You're going to see that today. And Tarek's actually going to cross-launch Jabber, not WebEx Teams, okay, or the WebEx Unified app. Contact address resolution from Office 365. You're going to see this. You're going to see the WebEx tab with the dial pad for calling, okay? And then when we show it, I'd have to ask Tarek. I'm not sure if they've grayed out the Microsoft calling features yet, but when you establish this integration, remember what I said in the beginning about user experience. You don't want to confuse the user and be able to place calls from both places. All right. So the best user experience would be to make that so it's not visible. Right? Ideally not visible. They may just gray it out. Okay. From a voice interoperability perspective, to connect to the PSTN or another system. Right? This is Microsoft direct routing, if you will. Cisco Unified Border Element certification will be announced in June. All right. Another thing that's a long time coming for a lot of our customers, because they already have Cisco Unified Border Elements on premise for one, right? They're using them as their voice gateways, but there's been a number of other SBCs that Microsoft certified in the beginning, like Ribbon, for example, would be one, okay? Or PEXIP is an SBC, would be one that they certified, all right? Now Cisco Unified Border Element on a Cisco ISR, right? That can do all those other things like SD-WAN, for example, right? Is going to be certified to bring your own PSTN, right? To Microsoft Teams. Right? Also, what's going to be utilized to establish interoperability between the two platforms from a voice perspective. Okay? So, with direct routing, you can connect your SBC at almost any telephony trunk or any third-party PSTN equipment. Use virtually any trunk with the Microsoft phone system. All right. So if you look at the visual depiction on the bottom, what I'm saying is announced in June is where it shows session border controller. That could be Cube. All right, that could be a Cisco Unified Border element at the end of the day, which it can also connect you to all those other third-party or Microsoft applications. Okay. So if you're to go bottom right to the left, this could be the path of your phone call. All right. Your call control in this instance would be Microsoft Teams pushing you out across the internet, connecting securely to the SBC, all right, and out to Joe's Pizza Shop or SMP. From an inbound perspective, you go left to right. All right, inbound call to a Teams user, all right, could come down through the Cisco Unified Border element into the Microsoft Teams environment, but also control a Cisco phone or simultaneously ring a Cisco phone along with your Teams client. This is what everybody's been looking for. So if you look at the box in the center, Cube is the SBC, the session border controller, third-party PBX call centers. Imagine that all says Cisco. Cisco Unified Communications Manager, Cisco Unified Contact Center Express or Enterprise, Cisco ATAs, all those third-party voice ecosystem partners. You can now securely connect the two worlds together, simultaneously ring Cisco phones, Cisco soft phones, and Microsoft Teams clients. All right. So this is going to be announced in June, assuming it doesn't slip. They stayed on track, and the latest update we got was that they're going to announce that. So that's all I have for voice. Tarek, before I hand off to you, I just want to take them through a file collaboration integration from the Webex Teams side so that everybody knows it's possible. All right, then we'll hand it over.
Sure.
So from a file collaboration perspective, this ends up being really, really important. So we spent a lot of time talking about Cisco Voice, Cisco Video endpoints. Microsoft Teams is the desktop client with Webex meetings behind the scenes. Okay. From a file collaboration perspective, it's important for all the folks on the call today who are using Webex Teams to know that this also has wonderful interop with Microsoft. If you come the other way, right, and this is what SMP uses, okay, we use Webex Teams, all integrated with our OneDrive accounts. So all the features that you would expect to leverage with Office Online, all right, are native in Webex Teams as well. And this has been out for a very long time. All right, very easy to attach a file via OneDrive, establish co-editing, all right, and put it in a space at the end of the day where you want to collaborate on it. All right, co-editing on the fly stays out on the OneDrive of your choice, and the same thing with regards to SharePoint. Okay, and actually, Tarek, before I hand off to you, I'll just show them really quick what this looks like. But stays in app, all right, or you can open in the desktop app. All right, so you can leave it out there in the web, Office Online, but if you want to open it in the desktop app, meaning the desktop app version of Word or Excel, you can absolutely do that. Okay, saves as regular, right? And this entire PowerPoint that I'm working on, that I've worked on here today, that's all out in OneDrive. We've been collaborating on Webex Teams. All right, so this works really, really well. It's been a native integration for a while. All right, and let me just pull up my Webex Teams app and show you that quickly. 1 second here. If I were to bring this over, can you see that okay, Tarek?
Yep.
Assuming you can. All right, so another thing that you can do with Webex Teams and everything that they're doing with regards to DLP and enterprise contact management is you can obviously restrict access between organizations, between domains, but also by the file repository of choice. If you're a big box organization or a Dropbox organization, all that's native. You can restrict storage to there. All right. But if I were just to share this PowerPoint from OneDrive, I simply just hit attach file. I could also drag it in. But I believe I have this in an events folder. If I were to come out into client solutions and go into events and go into Cisco MS Interop, this is the presentation that I'm using right now. All right, I could simply hit open. People in my organization, people with existing access, all right, or I could hit allow editing and hit apply, right, and it will drop this file in the space for everybody in this team space to be able to collaborate on going forward. All right, completely OneDrive integrated with co-editing. okay? And just to show you, there's a lot of people in this space, but it'll be right here under content in the top, and you'll see a little insignia that indicates that it's OneDrive linked right there. All right, you can copy that share link and send it to anybody else very, very quickly. All right, so that is the O365 integration with Webex Teams that I thought it was important for folks to see. Okay? So with that, Tarek, would you mind sharing out and showing the folks what the Microsoft Teams integration with Cisco Voice looks like?
Sure, no problem. If you're going to pass the ball over, please. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, wonderful. All right, thank you very much for everyone for joining today's webinar. And I'm going to be really taking a few minutes to talk about and show the cross-launch option from within Microsoft Teams. Before I do that, I just wanted to also share some of the URLs that are available on Cisco website. So I'm going to post 3 URLs. The first one talks about how to enable cross-launch for Jabber from within Microsoft Teams. And the second talks about the Webex calling. If you have a Webex Teams client, and how do you, integrate or do the cross-launch? Since those all 3 apps, and the third one basically is the Webex Meetings app, I wanted to at least put those out there so that as a reference. And let me just go ahead and do that. All of those 3 URLs I just put in the chat window. So take a look at those, and I'm just going to open up first one real quick. This is just a published document on Cisco website, talks about the Cisco Jabber Microsoft Teams Interop. Basically, Sean already walked through these steps as to when you are within Microsoft Teams client, you can click on a Jabber icon. This basically is an app as a gadget that you can add within the Teams client. And as soon as you click on it, it basically opens up a dial pad and you are able to dial a PSTN number. The second option that I'm going to cover is basically if you search up a user or you initiate a chat with a user, you are able to use the icon right there. Basically, it's the same icon that shows up on the left side where you can pin that icon, or on the bottom side on the screen where you can just click on it and it'll just open up a Jabber window where you can pick and choose which number you want to dial to initiate a call. So and with that, I'm just going to quickly move over to the Microsoft Teams and the Jabber. On my right side, basically it's just a Jabber client. I'm logged in. This Jabber client is registered over Expressway, and you can see it on the bottom right hand. It's basically registered to Communications Manager over Expressway. And on my left side, we have basically is the Microsoft Teams client. Now, you can see here, this is the icon for the Jabber client. And if you go under apps, you are able to basically search up, let's say if I wanted to add this app, it wasn't there, you can add it in there. Let's just do Cisco Jabber. You will see the Jabber icon, basically the app shows up in here. If it's already installed, you can open it up. Let me just go back to that shortcut that or the link that I shared. In this document, there are certain requirements specifically for the administrators and the users. When you are as the administrator, you want to make sure that you go through all these requirements in order to enable this feature. Because obviously, from a user perspective, we don't want to, users basically need to know how to basically launch the client and do the cross-launch within the Teams. But there is some prerequisites and there is some steps that the admins have to do. So going back to so if I click it on the Jabber icon right there, it just launches basically a dial pad, and I'm just going to quickly dial a number, and you will see the call basically goes out. And right as soon as I click on the icon, it basically initiates a call, and you'll see call ringing. It's just ringing for my Jabber client. So I'm just going to end this call. So that was one quick demo showing how to basically dial, make a call from the dial pad. And the second option basically is that if you are in a chat session with a user, I have a SMP demo user that basically already I initiated a chat. So if I can also search up any user, other user, for instance, if I pick a user, maybe let's say, search up Sean. Sean's name will show up in there. I can initiate a chat with Sean. and then I can just basically initiate a call. So now in this case, I've got a user, let's say SMP demo user, and I'm going to already in a chat session, all I have to do is click on the Jabber icon on the bottom here, and it will basically pull up a work number or mobile number that I can pick and choose and make a call. So it just basically just dial the number, the call goes through, it goes cross launch, and it'll just ring the phone. Let's just go ahead and disconnect this call. So that's basically a quick overview of how to enable cross launch within Microsoft Teams client. And this integration is available today, and just refer to those links that I just shared, and you should be able to get those configured and test out and play around with it. That's all I had, Sean. Thank you.
Yeah, nice. Thanks, Tarek. Great job. So as you can see, the voice integration is here in that regard. I'm sure the evolution of that will be, Jabber doesn't necessarily have to pop up, right? Calls and things like that will be taking place, and you'll just be staying in Teams. This is very, as I mentioned, circa 2010. This is the exact same thing that the two are doing to make sure that they can get dial tone or keep people in one application as much as possible. So a few things to consider. I don't have any more content to share. To summarize everything that we discussed today, we're getting ready to, there's going to be some big announcements in the next month and in the next quarter to where everything that we've talked about today will be possible. Right? It's important for everyone on the call today to know that we are having this discussion every single day with our clients. I think that several of you are probably in a very, very similar part of your journey. For the folks that are asking themselves, why would I go through all this if I can just do one with the other, or vice versa? If I go all in with Cisco, I don't need to worry about that. If I go all in with Microsoft, I don't need to worry about that. I would just ask you to hesitate and say that, in my opinion, as an outside source, and I think Tarek and Peter Groskopf, who's on the call, would say the same thing. Microsoft Teams has done a great job of capturing the desktop market share again. It's very similar to what happened when Office Communicator was evolving into Link. Right? The biggest thing here is the maturity of the other platforms. Right? So everything that folks need to keep in mind when you think of regulatory compliance and security, and enterprise-grade features, and scale. Right? Today, I think Microsoft Teams goes up to 250 users and shows 4 or 9 video participants. Every personal meeting room that comes with Webex gives you 1,075 before you move up to higher versions of Webex, right? So I think you would just, as you're going through your journey, consider your use cases, right? And figure out what's going to make the most sense for the end user, right? At the end of the day, voice and direct routing in the bring your own PSTN approach that Microsoft is going down this time, I do think that they made the right decision there, right? We need to watch the feature side of things. They've been down this path before, right? And that's the hesitation that I would make sure that you all have, right? And you probably have a lot of sandboxes, just like we do, where we're playing with these features and this technology and seeing how fast folks are moving. The last thing that I would say is, in the event that the two are integrated together, think about the large investment that you've already made in devices, in endpoints, in phones, and all those other things, right? The Cube integration that is supposed to be announced in June is a big deal, right? That's going to address that simultaneous ring piece that we've all been waiting for. And will it be perfect when it first comes out? No, right? But I do think that it's going to get us down to a singular client eventually, right, on the desktop. I think there'll be 2 evolutions. There'll be that, and then there'll be having both clients co-reside, specific for like contact center agents, and as long as they can keep it in there and have it run on the background and not have them chewing up unnecessary resources at the end of the day. So with that, we have, we're going to continuously provide updates on this topic. I wouldn't be shocked if we're doing one of these monthly right now with regards to Cisco and Microsoft Interop. So thanks for taking and spending an hour and a half with us. As I mentioned, we'll continue doing these because it's going to be ever evolving. Do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. You know that we can get access at times to certain information that you may have questions on.